Hello, everyone. Welcome back. And today we will be tackling the second of 15 contradictions in the Bible provided by atheist.org. And we are going to see if these contradictions hold up to good reasoning or if they just appear to contradict each other. Today's contradiction has to do with how long will the earth last? Will the earth last forever? We have two verses that seem to be saying different things. Our first verse is in Ecclesiastes 1:4 that says, "A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever." Now, this apparently seems to contradict our verse in 2 Peter 3:10, which says, "But the day of the Lord will come like a thief, and then the heavens will pass away with a roar, and the heavenly bodies will be burned up and dissolved, and the earth and the works that are done on it will be exposed." So what's the contradiction here? Well, it seems like the Bible says on one hand that the earth will last forever, and yet on the other hand that the earth will be burned up and destroyed. How can it possibly be saying both things? Well, the first point to make is that Christians do believe that the earth will be destroyed. This is a consistent message in the New Testament. For instance, if we go to Matthew 24:35, here Jesus is speaking and says, "Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away." So we can be pretty sure, even if we don't know the specifics, that the earth as we know it will pass away. So how can Ecclesiastes 1:4 say that the world will last forever? To do that, we're going to start by looking at the Hebrew word being translated as forever, and this word is olam. Now, olam is used several times in the Old Testament, and sometimes does refer to forever, like an infinite amount of time. However, olam can also refer to a long or undefined amount of time, while not meaning literally forever. And to prove that, we're going to look at two examples of olam being used not as an infinite amount. Our first example is Genesis 49, verse 26, which says, "The blessings of your father are mighty beyond the blessings of my parents, up to the bounties of the everlasting," or olam, "hills. May they be on the head of Joseph and on the brow of him who was set apart from his brothers." So here this verse in Genesis is describing olam hills, or hills that go on eternal. We can infer here that the author doesn't actually mean that these mountains go on forever, that these hills go on forever, right? Because that would be impossible. Instead, we know that the author means they go on for a long, undefined amount of time. Another example here is in Exodus 21, verse 6, and this has to do with laws around slavery in the Old Testament. Now, that's a huge discussion that we're going to save for a separate video, but the important thing to know here is that the Old Testament is giving laws about how slaves can choose to stay with their masters if they choose so. And there was a time and specific period where they could choose to do this. If they did, here's what Exodus 21, verse 6 has to say. "Then his master shall bring him to God, and he shall bring him to the door or the doorpost. And his master shall bore his ear through with an awl, and he shall be his slave forever," or olam. Once again, here we see an example of olam being used to refer to the remainder of somebody's life. However, we know that human beings can't live forever. They're not eternal. We know that human beings pass away at some point. So of course, when olam is being used here, it means a long time. It means the remainder of somebody's life. Another translation of olam is age lasting. So now with that being said, if we go back to Ecclesiastes 1:4, "A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever," or olam, we understand when we look at the word olam that doesn't necessarily mean the earth actually lives forever. And that's an important point that we're going to hold on to for a second. It might sound kind of weird that the word forever could mean not actually forever, but when you think about how we use language today, it's not really that different. For instance, if I were to be at the grocery store with my wife and the line was taking a long time and I were to turn to her and say, "This line is taking forever," no one would actually assume I mean that it's going to take an infinite amount of time. They would know I'm just meaning it's going to take a long time. The same can be true for the Old Testament. And that goes into our second point on Ecclesiastes 1:4, which is to look at what the verse is actually saying, to look at the context of the verse. So if we go back again to Ecclesiastes 1:4, "A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever." What is the author actually saying here? Well, the point is that human life is short, but the earth is long. And so while generations come and go, the earth stays throughout all of it. And this goes on to the greater point of Ecclesiastes, which is that life is meaningless without God. The life is but vapor in the wind. It's a short, temporary thing. So here the author is contrasting the shortness of people's life with how long the earth is going to last. The point here isn't to make this definite statement that the earth will last literally forever. The point is to show how temporary people's lives are. So another example of this being used in Ecclesiastes is just a few verses down in Ecclesiastes 1:14, which says this: I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and a striving after wind. So of course, the author doesn't literally mean here that he has seen everything under the sun. That would be impossible. But what's the point the author's trying to make? I have seen it all, and it's all meaningless without God. So if we look at the point of what Ecclesiastes is actually trying to communicate, especially with the understanding that forever doesn't actually have to mean forever, I think it's a very fair interpretation to say that Ecclesiastes 1:4, the point is that the earth lasts a long time while man's life only lasts a short time. Not necessarily that the earth is literally going to last forever. And our last point is that technically, in a way, Ecclesiastes 1:4 is kind of correct. In a way, the world will last forever. In Revelations 21, verse 1, we read this: Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. So while we do read in Revelations, again, another verse that proves that the earth that we know will pass away, it also says that there will be a new earth that will be created, that will last forever. So in a way, Ecclesiastes 1:4 is correct. The earth, in some form or another, will last forever, even if this current earth will be destroyed at some point. Hopefully this was helpful to you and encouraging that once we start to look into these verses and dive into it a little bit more, these don't contradict each other. They actually are part of a unified story. So I'm excited to keep going down this list. It's been fun to research these contradictions, and hopefully this is helpful to you. God bless. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.